Hey everyone, we're going to be talking about some safe houses in Left 4 Dead 2, and we're going to be scaling them on comfort, safety, and long-term survivability. So for the very first one we have is the very beginning of the Dead Center campaign, and it's on top of a burning building on a rooftop. Definitely not the safest of places, but we do actually have a table with a few medkits on it and some very basic weapons, but they're still useful for what we have. We also have a little wooden pallet that we can use to barricade some stuff if we can find some nails, and a chair with also a ashtray and a piece of plywood on the floor, as well as some luggage that we can use as bedding or a pillow. And we also have a little potted plant, which is nice, and some more plywood. And the main issue with this one place is the very much lack of safety. We're on top of a burning building, and the only thing holding us off from the undead is a breakable metal door. And that's really where the extent of our problems come in. I also do feel like it's worth noting how much area you actually have if you ignore the fence on the outside. Now we are going to deal with a few of these little guys real quick, but besides that, you can really see the vulnerability and the safety if I have to constantly fight for my life while trying to see what I can do here. I do think that if you barricaded the doors, it would be a little bit safer, but you are on top of a burning building with not a lot of time, as when you progress further through, you can see things starting to sort of burn down, and that's not exactly what we want. We can also see how easily the pallet breaks, which is probably a good sign for us, but it's not really what we're looking for in a campaign. The next thing that we're going to talk about, though, is what can we get from these rooms that will help us maybe increase our chances of survival. Now, because this does feel fairly new in the beginning of the outbreak, there might still be water in those sinks, which is good for us, of course. We can also take a look in this room, and there's a lot of furniture, including some nice looking chairs, a few med kits, and some adrenaline, stuff like that. We do have a few bodies scattered around, which isn't the best thing, but you can, I guess, throw them off the side if you really need to, but I would prefer not to. We also have a lot of broken sort of furniture that we can use to barricade, and a lot of glass too, which isn't, of course, the best thing, but it can still be used. And of course, I die there. Now we're going to move on to the second time. This time I go all the way to the end, and we can talk about what we see, and then we'll go over everything that's there. Alright, and we are back, this time with the AI companions on a normal run, so we can, finish this. The point here I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of extra space just beyond those little fences, which would be a great little boost against the undead. And it's not hard in real life to climb that little fence, especially with the little ledge you got there. And you can see you have a lot of space. You could possibly put a rain catcher down, or a grill maybe if you can find one. And you do have a lot more room to navigate and build. But again, we're on top of a burning building with not a lot of time to really continue. And on the rooftop, there isn't much we can use to really increase our safety, besides maybe blocking off the door with a chair or two. And of course, if you do decide on going down further in the hotel, from the 8th floor, to try to get some more things that you can use, you will have to go through quite a bit of the infected. Now, that's not the worst thing that you have to go through on this stage, as you will go through fire and spit from the special infected. It's definitely not the easiest to maneuver. But you do see we have a television, which maybe we can plug it in, and a mini fridge, which is actually a pretty big find. If we do have electricity, we can freeze food. And of course, I get grabbed here, and my teammates suck. But that's alright. They're AI. And we can already see here, if you could theoretically clear out this top part, you would be a lot safer and have much more room to maneuver around in. But the really big factor here is it's burning as we speak, and you really can't stay there long term. Even if you get to the very first floor, it's still burning there, and it's burning all the way to the next safe room, and it's just not very viable for long-term survival. But we'll get to the rating later. Right now, we're just going to talk about what we see here and what we can use. Over here, we have much more wooden furniture, which we can use to maybe build something or stoke a fire. And we do have a lot of research from CETA that we could use to maybe, I don't know, research about the infected or just keep ourselves entertained. We also learned here about the amount of safe houses that are left and ones we can use. And I also feel like it's worth noting how many windows are here. And we can see pretty early on the infected can climb over things and they can also climb up things. And I feel like if they had enough, and especially like things like a hunter, I feel like they can get up through those windows, and I feel like you would also have to barricade them. But there is a chainsaw up here, which we could use to, I don't know, get rid of some larger obstacles or the undead, or we could use to chop up the wood we find. And we also do have quite a bit of beds laying around, and beds make a very good defense because they're heavy, and we can also use them to sleep. And they're all around a pretty big staple, because as we go on through the campaigns, we'll find less and less comfortable things we can use to sleep. But I also feel like an underrated thing here is the amount of toilet paper and paper towels that are just kind of laying around in the carts. Usually in these safe houses, you have a very severe lack of luxuries, and in this, to my right here, you can see a vending machine with food and water, so you can last a little bit longer, a defibrillator unit, bile, but we can already see here the fire's gotten to this floor. And it's not impossible to take out the fire, but we would need a fire extinguisher, or hell, probably like 9 fire extinguishers at this point. And it also weakens the things around here. It's not great, and as you can see here, I'm trying to emphasis to the burning of the hotel. But I do feel like it's worth noting the clean towels here, and maybe bed sheets and stuff like that. That's just gonna be nice to have around. And sorry, coach. And we also have a lot of these little bed sheets and towels, and we also have toilet paper, paper towels, defibrillator unit, bleach would be useful for cleaning up all the blood around, boxes, and some more fun things. And of course, a pretty well stocked machine. I don't know about the soda machine, but depending on the other one, I feel like it'd be fine. There's a lot of chairs and luggage around, which I feel like the luggage would be pretty good at finding things like food and water and more clothes to wear. But progressing through this hotel without the fire being gone is a big problem, and especially if you're just a normal person, walking on those little cliff edges thing is going to be very uncomfortable. And as you can see here, we're progressing, and we really have an abundance of beds here. We can really use the beds to block out all the windows, and we can try and extinguish the fire to create a more easy path to walk in and around, and lots of ways to freeze food we can find. But the real problem here is, again, the fire. We can't really live here long term, especially with the amount of fire that's going on. And there's an ironing board, but the power does seem to be off in this place, which does take away a lot of the sort of good things from the freezer, but we don't really want to depend on that too much. And you see I go down here trying to get a nice angle of the fire, but what do you do? And meanwhile, we can talk about how much fire is here. I'm not a fire expert, but I feel like this much fire, I'm pretty sure we'll just die pretty quick if we stay on the top. And I also feel like as it burns, it'll start decaying some of the foundations, and eventually it'll crumple, or not, that's fine. But the fire does seem to be burning like not very flammable things, and you can see here the just amount of fire. It's really getting into a problem. I really feel like that first floor you can maybe cut through it a bit, but as you progress, it just gets harder and harder. And you can see here, I don't really know why I did that, but it's fine. There is a lot of throwables here, including like a pipe bomb, lots of bile. There is no Molotovs though, at least on my run. And there is a fire axe, which would be very nice and good for long-term sort of chopping wood. But again, the long-term is not looking great here. We've also found another storage room with not as much stuff on the shelves, but shelves nonetheless, which can be used as a very good barricade and pretty easy to maneuver around. And we also have this sort of I want to say makeshift safe house, but it's not really a safe house. I'm only saying that because of the sleeping bags on the ground, and I feel like that the sleeping bags are a huge plus, as again the amount of luxuries you get from being in this sort of area is great. Unfortunately, I feel like it's going to all sort of blow down, but it is what it is. And the zombie hordes are, coming from pretty much nowhere. I guess they could be in an elevator, but seriously, no. And I feel like once you clear out these levels, you have a pretty safe level. And of course, you have so many suitcases you can look through to help find, plethora of stuff, really. And you can see we have like six, maybe, I don't know, 10 sleeping bags here, along with some more toilet paper and clothes and comfortable chairs and stools and all sorts of luxuries, as well as an emergency light on, which is great, I guess. Another potted plant and more not just really important things. And I'll skip past this elevator, but as you can see, we are on the about the 7th floor, going all the way down to the lobby. So there's fire probably going through every single one. So now we made it all the way to the bottom, and we can really see the damage the fire has caused. As you can see, the roof is collapsing, and I can't really feel like the hotel will stand as strong as it did when we first got here, after the fire is out, or even if the fire actually gets out. And it's really just not a good place. You could realistically, I feel, get around 3 floors to yourself. If the fire wasn't burning, you could get all of them, but it's just not very viable. And I feel like even if you did stay after the fire burned, what would you really want to stay for besides just a bunch of ash? You burnt away so many crucial things that could help you survive, and I feel like just in terms of other safe houses, it really isn't a very strong one to sort of upgrade and make something useful out of. But as you see here, I'm making it to the second one, and even here, I was feeling like might as well just use this place, right? It's outside of the hotel, but there's still fire coming in all the way from the hotel, and there's even more sort of barricaded stuff here that could be fire. And then this was really what took it off for me, is that the undead will come like jumping out onto here, so this just eliminates it as an option of making it safe. And we make it all the way to the end. So let's get to the ratings. And here is my very advanced rating system. So let's go over the safety of that very first safe house, which was the roof. I'll put up a little picture here if I can. And we're going to rate this out of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, and 5 being average. And let's just start off by saying this is one of the worst safe houses out there. Not to mention, you're on the very top of a burning building, and the only defense you have is a breakable metal door. In terms of the very first safety, just very brink, after consideration, we're going to give it about a 2.5. Just because there's really nothing keeping you safe here besides that one metal door. In terms of comfort, though, this is a bit of a different story. You're very high up, so you have that nice breeze. You're also outside, which is pretty rare for these types of safe houses. So you get to be out in the sun, and you get to be out in the moonlight, so that's always fun. And you also have some luggage laying around, and a chair or two, and also a table. It does have some pretty basic amenities, and I feel like that deserves about a 5. But we're also going to add on the fact that we have luggage there and some extra clothes, which is always a nice aspect. So we're going to give the comfort a 7.5. Now this is where the real points come in. Long-term survival goes from 0 to 20, 20 being the best, 0 being worst. And really, this has no long-term survival. Even if you stay after everything burns down, and let's just say it doesn't completely destroy the building, what are you really staying for? You're very high up, and you're at a pretty limited amount of resources. Once the food from the suitcases run out and the vending machines, you have nothing. Especially water, too. It's going to be pretty scarce, and you're going to be living off soda for a while. And there isn't any nearby water sources that I could see, so you're pretty screwed staying here. However, there are some pretty nice amenities that are in there, including a mini fridge, lots of sinks, lots of clothes, lots of luggage, and a ton of beds and chairs. There's really a lot of stuff to keep you from going mad. If you did secure that roof and you went down and started clearing out those hotel parts that aren't being casted into the inferno, you are looking at a pretty good long-term survival situation. You have lots of ways to barricade, lots of places to sleep, lots of places to maneuver around. The only real issue being the fire and lack of natural food and water sources. So we're going to give this a 9.5 in long-term survival. 9.5. So I'm going to tally this up and see if I make any other changes, and we'll finish up with that. So here's the final score. It's a bit worse than an F, really. The main drawbacks were the safety and the long-term survival. Comfort was great. If there wasn't a fire, this would be a much, much better safe house. But for the very first safe house of Dead Center, that is the score we're going to give it. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other safe house ideas you'd like me to go through, I'm going to go through all Left 4 Dead 2, all Left 4 Dead 1, and then branch off to other games that have like sort of safe houses I can review. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like, you can always subscribe, like my video, share it if you want, and thanks for watching.